Greetings, friends. You are watching the Ruslan Belov channel. Today we will discuss the events in Ukraine as of January 13th, 2026. Several important and illustrative developments have taken place at once, affecting not only the military situation, but also the country's political and economic stability. That is exactly where we will begin. On the night of January 13th, the Russian Federation carried out another large-scale strike that covered almost the entire territory of Ukraine, western, eastern, and southern regions. Energy facilities, logistics hubs, and critical infrastructure sites were targeted. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, Ukrainian sources published a map that immediately drew attention for one key reason. It showed exclusively ballistic missile strikes. This is the main distinction between this attack and all previous ones. Ballistic missiles struck targets in Kiev, Kharkiv, Kryvyi Rih, and areas east of Zaporizhzhia. Previously, the Russian side followed a different pattern, first deploying large numbers of drones to overload and exhaust Ukrainian air defenses, and only then launching missile strikes. This time, the sequence was changed. According to pro-Ukrainian monitoring channels, more than 20 Iskander missiles were launched within roughly 1 hour, after which attack drones were deployed. By the morning, a complete map of the night's strike was published. First, ballistic and cruise versions of Iskander missiles were used, followed later by Geran-type drones. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense reported that a total of 318 aerial targets were detected during the night, of which 247 were shot down or suppressed, with the majority being drones. The situation with missiles was different. Ukraine claims to have intercepted up to 7 Iskander missiles. Considering that more than 20 were launched within a single hour, it can be concluded that most of the missiles reached their targets, even according to Ukrainian data. Once again, the strikes targeted energy infrastructure. From early morning, reports have been coming in from various regions about disruptions to electricity, water supply, and heating. However, another piece of news emerged today, which in my view is the most significant in terms of consequences. Reports indicate that several large retail chains in Kiev and the Kiev region have begun transitioning to a restricted mode of operation. This does not refer to formal announcements, but rather to the actual closure of stores or changes in operating hours. And this is an extremely important signal. The reason is that large retail chains primarily rely on energy-intensive equipment: refrigeration units, freezers, display cases, and storage systems. All of this cannot simply be turned off temporarily without enormous risks. Unlike household appliances, this involves tens of thousands of units of equipment spread across the city. Voltage fluctuations lead to equipment failure and spoilage of goods. It is clear that retail chains, having already faced initial losses, are beginning to minimize further damage. Until energy supplies are fully stabilized, there is a high probability that hypermarkets and large stores will either restrict their operations or temporarily shut down entirely. This leads to a far more serious problem. In many districts, a large shopping center is the only source of food and essential goods within walking distance. If one store closes, then another, and eventually all stores within a radius of several kilometers shut down, people are effectively left without basic infrastructure. This can result in a wide range of consequences, from chaotic searches for food to growing social discontent and increasing questions regarding the state of air defense and the energy sector. I am deliberately choosing the most neutral wording possible, but this is already the first serious warning sign. It is increasingly giving the impression that the goal of the latest strikes is not only to damage energy facilities, but also to inflict systemic economic damage, primarily targeting retail chains and logistics, the very foundations of everyday life in cities such as Kiev, Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, and Odesa. Already today, reports and calls are emerging urging expressions of dissatisfaction with local authorities in certain areas. How this situation will continue to unfold remains to be seen. Now let us move on to information from the southern regions. We then turn to the Zaporizhzhia sector of the front, from which various reports have also been received over the past 24 hours. Let me remind you that the day before, information was published about the advance of Russian units in the area of the settlement of Novoboykivske. Today, confirmation of these reports was expected, as well as possible confirmation of advances in the areas of Primorske and Novoya Kivlivka, from the Russian Ministry of Defense. However, no official information on this matter has been released so far. In practice, only a few publications by pro-Russian experts are available in open sources. According to their assessments, fighting is indeed currently taking place in the areas of Pavlivka and Novoyakivlivka, but no significant changes to the front line or major map corrections have been recorded yet. As for the eastern Zaporizhzhia direction, key events are currently unfolding along the Haicha River, on the stretch between the settlements of Kosovtsevo and Zelene. Increasing amounts of information have been coming in from this network of strongpoints over recent days, with fairly high combat activity noted. Russian units are attempting to advance along the Haicha River in order to link two bridgeheads on the Ukrainian side of the river, near Kosovtsevo and toward Huliaipol. Such changes have been observed for several consecutive days. The Russian army continues active offensive operations, and according to available diagrams and cartographic materials, an assault is currently underway against three remaining strongpoints located west of the settlement of Pryluki. Next, we move to the Dobropilia sector of the front. The main news from this direction comes from the areas of Shakov and Toretske. Today, Ukrainian sources published video footage showing a series of FPV drone strikes against suspected Russian positions. A significant number of episodes were recorded, some of which were geolocated and plotted on maps. Analysis of this footage suggests that earlier information published by various mapping services regarding Russian control over Shakov is being confirmed. Based on these publications, the map was updated over the past 24 hours, and Shakov is now fully marked in red. These data also confirm reports of further Russian advances toward Toretske, followed by movement in the direction of Pavlivka and Novopavlivka. Information about advances toward Pavlivka and Novopavlivka had previously been published and noted by several pro-Russian experts. This is a highly important direction, as it points to the potential development of an offensive toward Druzhkivka. Regarding the Kostiantynivka sector of the front, the main combat activity is currently unfolding south of the H32 and H20 highways. Over the past 24 hours, a significant number of adjustments have been recorded in this area, reported by both pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian analysts. The Russian army has launched offensive operations here with the objective of establishing full control over the H32 and H20 highways, which run from Mirnohrad toward Chasiv Yar and Bakhmut. In other words, the goal is to take control of a key transport artery in this region. Judging by the latest updates and expert assessments, this task has almost been completed by the Russian side. Neutral cartographic resources continue to clarify the situation, and according to incoming information, several pockets of resistance by Ukrainian armed forces units have formed in this sector. One such pocket, according to available data, is in full encirclement, located south of the H20-H32 highway junction. Another so-called pocket has formed south of the settlement of Berostok. At present, Russian forces are concentrating their efforts on completing the encirclement and fully reaching the H20 highway, after which combat operations are likely to begin for the southwestern part of Kostiantynivka. At the same time, it must be noted that despite the large number of publications and expert assessments, no video evidence has yet been presented that could unequivocally confirm the developments unfolding in this sector. Next, we move to the Lyman sector of the front. Only a limited amount of news is coming from this direction. According to various neutral mapping services, the Russian army is entering the final stage of combat operations for two settlements: Ozern, located on the Russian side of the Siversky Donetsk River, and Zakotne, situated on the Ukrainian bank. Reports indicate that the first reconnaissance and sabotage groups are beginning to move toward the banks of the Siversky Donetsk from both sides. It is likely that high-intensity combat will soon unfold in this area, with the main objective being an advance toward Kriva Luka, as well as battles for the strategic high ground along the Siversky Donetsk River. Next, we turn to the Borova direction. Here, the situation around the settlement of Redkadub continues to be clarified. Let me remind you that several days ago, the Russian army launched an active offensive in this area, and during this time, the front line has undergone noticeable changes. Russian units continue their offensive actions, and as of today, there are grounds to believe that Ukrainian armed forces units, under pressure, were forced to withdraw from Redkadub toward the west and northwest. In effect, based on the totality of data available from open sources, it can be stated that the Russian army fully controls the eastern bank of the Nitrius River. At the same time, the formation of a bridgehead on the western bank of the river continues, with the aim of advancing toward the Oskil River and in the direction of the settlements of Lozova and Pisky Rakivsky. Combat operations are already underway in this area, and we have discussed developments here in detail over the past several days. Meanwhile, information is emerging about a counterstrike by the Ukrainian armed forces in the areas of Zahrizov, Novokruchliakivka, and Bohuslavka. Over the past few days, the map in this sector has also undergone significant changes. Comparing the current situation with how it looked on January 6, 2026, one can note the appearance of additional zones added based on new publications and expert assessments. At present, some analysts report the beginning of a localized counter-offensive in the Bohuslavka direction, as a result of which the Ukrainian side has reportedly managed to partially regain control over previously lost territory. As for the Kupiansk sector of the front, no significant changes have been recorded so far. A similar situation is observed in the northern directions, from which almost no new information has been received over the past 24 hours. A Russian drone flew approximately 150 kilometers and struck a vessel in the port of Odesa. Another ship was attacked in the Black Sea, near the Odesa coastline. As we can see, the Russian armed forces are conducting precision strikes against vessels heading to Odesa ports. The drone hit a ship that was anchored in the Odesa Bay, where intense fires were reported. According to the Telegram channel Legitimny, this was most likely a retaliatory strike in response to an attack by Ukraine's security service, SBU, on a Russian commercial vessel in neutral waters near Turkey last week. These actions are aimed at discouraging ships from entering Odesa ports and inflicting economic damage on Ukraine's economy. As a result, insurance premiums for vessels traveling to Ukrainian ports are expected to rise once again. Many of our sources indicate that in the first half of 2026, the Russian armed forces plan to employ a tank fist in an offensive operation, consisting primarily of T-90, T-80BVM, and T-72 tanks, equipped with Russia's newly developed Arena M active protection system. In addition, the tanks will reportedly be fitted with a new radar system for detecting drones, according to the Telegram channel Legitimny. All test trials have already been completed, and preparations are now underway to test this system in real combat conditions. This is expected to be a demonstrative offensive featuring a major breakthrough of Ukrainian defenses. It will also pose a serious challenge to Ukraine's defensive strategy, which is largely based on the mass use of drones against advancing Russian forces. Some sources suggest that the Russian army may deploy these systems on a new axis, potentially the Chernihiv direction or the northern part of Sumy Oblast. A Chernihiv front is considered quite plausible. At this stage, there is no confirmed information, but the appearance of tanks equipped with such drone protection could fundamentally change the course of events and give the Russian army an even greater advantage. It is also worth noting that all major world powers are developing automated turrets that can be mounted on armored vehicles to protect against drones. For now, we are observing developments, but the year ahead promises to be interesting and to bring many new technological innovations. That concludes our review, dear friends. Thank you for staying with us, subscribe to the channel, support the release with likes, and all the best to you.